Thank you. I'm Patti. I'm an alcoholic. I'm grateful to be sober. I'm grateful to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is a moment I didn't think was ever going to get here. I like long timer. I like that. They put my name on a piece of paper for me so that I would remember who I was when I got up here. I'm a chronic malcontent. So from the time I arrived until just about 2.5 hours ago, I have been whining about the fact that I didn't have any ribbons. Lynn Wilder had ribbons. He looked like he just won the horse race. And I didn't have any ribbons, and I've been whining about the ribbons. And Lynn's my fiance. I may or may not tell that story, but his wife finally arrived this afternoon to take over. Somehow she has some power over him somehow, because after she arrived, he gave me his ribbons. So now I have the ribbons, and now I have to find something else to whine about, which shouldn't take more than just a couple more seconds. I've enjoyed myself so far. Hope to start enjoying myself again in about 45 minutes. I know the meeting is just kind of a placeholder between dinner and the dance. And the reason I know that is you've already got the ball started. So if anybody wants to break out into a little disco during this talk, you just go right ahead. They asked us to silence our phones. I used to wear my garage door opener so I looked important. But now I have a phone, just like the rest of you. And quite frankly, I appreciate putting it on vibrate. I've got mine on vibrate in my pocket. I have several people in the room already scheduled to call me at different times. So I may be going along and just kind of jump a little bit up here. So y'all know what that is. I really enjoyed my friend Larry last night. Somebody told me not to worry. This is a good crowd. You put up with just about anything. And I thought, well, yeah, you put up with Larry last night, so I'm probably going to be all right. I love listening to Larry talk. I could listen to him talk every day. I'm glad I don't have to, but I could. I was at the Al-Anon luncheon. Those of you who missed the Al-Anon luncheon, Miss Bo, make sure you get the CD. Gave a great talk. Bo and I have a history. We were in Duluth together not too many years ago, and there's a casino in Duluth. And I don't know how we know this, but Lynn and I were talking. Alcoholics, we sort of know stuff without even talking to each other. And I think Al-Anons have a little bit of that, too, because we didn't even speak about it. Are you guys watching me on the TV? How do I look over there? Nice? Okay. We didn't even speak about this, I don't think, but in Duluth they have walkways up in the air that are enclosed. And all of a sudden, Bo and I are in this enclosed walkway walking after the Friday night meeting, and we're just walking, and we just walked right into a casino. It was like, oh my gosh, look where we are. Well, we probably should gamble. So we did until about 5 in the morning, and then we snuck back to the hotel and slept really fast so that we were both showed up at the morning meeting. We were a little green, but we were there. And Saturday night after the meeting, well, we were in that little walkway again. And we just and we ended up in a casino. Well, we might as well gamble, so we gambled a little. About 5 o'clock in the morning, we snuck back to the hotel, slept really fast, so we were up in time for not together, we didn't sleep really fast, but... Okay, Shirley, if you're listening to this, we weren't together sleeping fast. We're both at the morning meeting, and now we're really green. I mean, I always figure you can sleep at home, though. And so the meeting ends, and we both had flights to our respective homes several hours later. And so our hostesses were trying to figure out what they were going to do with us, because they have to entertain us. And so they decide, well, let's take them and show them the casinos. And they're really excited because they're going to show us the casinos. So we're just acting like, oh, yeah, you got casinos here? And they take us to the casino, and we walk in, and the change girl says, hey, hey, Bo, hey, Patti. We got busted, but no, it's good being with Bo again, and of course my fiance Lynn Wilder. Larry's job Friday night was to take you up, and Bo kept you up, and I'm going to try and maintain. And Lynn's got the biggest job tomorrow, because by tomorrow morning we're all going to be way up here and just sailing. And Lynn's job tomorrow morning is to bring us all down, so that we can go home back to our normal little lives. So he's got the big job tomorrow morning. I enjoyed the Al-Anon luncheon. They gave us packets of seeds at the Al-Anon luncheon. I couldn't quite figure it out for the rest of you, but I knew what it meant for me. It reminded me of a few years ago. I was loitering in a drugstore. I like to hang out at the pharmacy. It kind of brings back fond memories. And I'm loitering by the pharmacy at this drugstore, and they have a rack there that they're selling seeds, and the seeds are on sale, 10 packs for $1. And I'm thinking, 10 packs for $1, that's really a deal. I don't have any hobbies. I think I need a hobby. And 10 packs for $1, I could have a garden. That would be like a really nice hobby. And so I spent about, 45 minutes trying to decide what 10 packs to buy. And I finally bought 10 packs of seeds, and I get home, and I'm out in my backyard because I'm going to have a garden, I'm going to have a hobby. And I go out in my backyard, and I really don't have any place in my backyard for a garden. I mean, everything's already planted. The only part of my backyard that's not planted is I have this slope on the side of the yard. And I think, well, I could plant my garden there. But I don't know a lot about gardening. But I'm kind of thinking, if you plant on a slope and you water, how do you know that the water actually goes down to your seeds? And I don't want to have to spend all my time worrying about my seeds. So I figure what I'll do is I'll build a wall, and I'll fill it with dirt, and I'll level it off. And that way I'll know when I water that the water will actually get to the seeds. So I go to Home Depot, I buy a truckload of brick, I have them deliver it to my house, haul it out now I'm not a mason, but how hard can this be? So I start mixing up the mortar, which is there's a precise recipe. Who knew that? And I finally get the mortar all mixed up, and I start laying the brick. Now, I'm an alcoholic. I suffer from alcoholism. I don't have alcoholwasm. And my alcoholism, I'm one of those alcoholics, I start really, really fast. But then I kind of run out of enthusiasm. And I'm building my little brick wall. I kind of ran out of enthusiasm, but I had a nice-sized brick wall, and I figure, okay, that's good. So I go buy a truckload of dirt, and they deliver my dirt, and I fill it in. Well, I ran out of enthusiasm just a little too soon. And the wall, and it's still a slope. But it's not quite as high, but it's the angle, but it's still a slope. So I've got another truckload of brick, and halfway up I made another wall. So now I have a terrace kind of looking thing. And the second one was it was kind of crooked. It was kind of snaky looking. And you can fix that with a lot of stucco. And I fixed that, and I got more dirt, and now I have a terrace to plant my seeds. So I'm looking at it thinking, I'm not home a lot. I mean, I travel a lot on weekends. I work full time. I go to a meeting every night. I sponsor a lot of women. I'm not really home a lot. I better put some drip hose out here to water my seeds. So I'm not a plumber, but how hard can it be? I tap into the water main, and I bring a line out to my garden, and I lay drip hose. And then I think, well, maybe I need some light. And besides that, with the drip hose, I'm going to need to put a timer on it. So I'm going to have to bring electricity out anyway. I might as well put some Malibu lights out here for my garden. So I'm not an electrician, but you can tap into you can bring an electric line out pretty easily. I brought an electric line out. I put a timer. I put Malibu lights. I spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to plant $1 worth of seeds. And I share that with you because if you're new and you're thinking, what in the hell, especially probably out in the outside area, what in the hell are you thinking about? I share that with you because I suffer from alcoholism as badly tonight as I did on October 4th, 1975 when I first came to you. And I don't drink alcohol, but I have alcoholism. There's something in here that thinks just a little bit differently than the rest of the world. And I need you as badly tonight as I needed you when I need you more tonight than I needed you when I first came to you. And so I'm grateful that you invited me. I'm grateful that you invited me and offered me an opportunity to participate in my recovery. Because without you, I'm dead. Without you, there is no me. Without you, I have no life. And I am so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps for giving me everything that I have tonight. I didn't have my first drink until I was 13 years old. I'm sorry I waited that long, but I had no idea what alcohol would do to me or for me. I grew up in an alcoholic home. I didn't even know that until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I had no idea what alcohol would do to me or for me. I don't remember thinking I'll never drink. I certainly never planned to have a drink. I don't remember thinking about alcohol one way or another. And yet when I was 13 years old, I was on a camping trip with a group of girls. We were camped on the beach just south of Oceanside. And I remember that Friday night getting into the tent. And I had a bottle of vodka in that tent. I had no idea where that bottle came from. I have always believed it was the grace of God, but I've never been able to confirm that. I had no idea what alcohol would do to me or for me, but I remember taking the bottle out, and I remember being excited about having it. And I asked if anybody wanted any, and they didn't. And the reason they gave me for not wanting it was all we had to mix with it was grape soda and root beer. And I said, well, so what? And I took off the top, and I drank half the bottle. And I looked around the tent, and nothing had gotten different, nothing had changed, so I drank the second half of the bottle, and that was to be the end of my social drinking. Never again after that day did I ever offer anybody a drink out of my bottle. And I don't know about y'all, but I never had resentments until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And one of my early resentments in Alcoholics Anonymous was I heard you talk about your first drink. And you talked about taking the drink, and you described how it felt in your mouth. And you talked about how it felt as it went down your throat. And you described it as it hit your stomach, and it hit your stomach, it exploded. It went to your fingernails, your toenails, your pimples dropped off, you grew a couple inches, you dropped 20 pounds, you became Prince Charles, Lady Di, wonderful things happened to you. And that simply wasn't the case for me. I had my first drink of alcohol, and absolutely nothing happened to me for about 15 minutes. And at the end of the 15 minutes, the only thing that happened to me was I had to go to the bathroom. And it's my belief tonight that if I were to drink a quart of anything, in about 15 minutes I would have to go to the bathroom. So I got out of the tent and I shuffled down to the outhouse and I went in and went to the bathroom. And when I got done and went to get up, I realized I was absolutely and totally 100% paralyzed to the toilet seat. I could not move. I couldn't even blink. I didn't feel my heart beating, and I was overcome with fear. And of course, the fear was that somebody else was going to have to come use that outhouse, and there I was, paralyzed to the toilet seat. Now, later in my drinking, I did discover that two people can use the same toilet at the same time, if the second person is very careful about what they're doing. I wanted to see how he signed that, but... That's another thing I want to congratulate you for. I think it's a high-class convention when you have a signer. I think it's an absolutely high-class convention. But anyway, I didn't know any of that when I was 13. What I did know is I somehow I intuitively knew that the body was made up of energy, and I somehow figured if I could gather my energy, I would be all right. So I've always referred to it as my first formal meditation, because I sat and I gathered my energy. And when my energy seemed to be all centrally located, when it seemed to be all in one place, I just sort of fell off the toilet, out the door, into the sand, and started crawling back to the tent. Now, of course, since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, I've discovered that my entire problem that night was my attitude. If my attitude would have been right, I could have had a fantasy. I was in the Marines, I was being dive bombed as I was trying to get back to safety, and if my attitude would have been right, it could have been a wonderful experience. Now, in my own defense, I have to tell you, my pants were still down at my ankles. I had started to get sick. I couldn't quite get through it. I couldn't get around it. And I've always contended under those circumstances it's a little difficult to have a good attitude. I did somehow manage to get back to the tent. I fell in and I passed out. And when I came to in the morning, I realized nobody was in the tent with me, and I couldn't figure out where they went until my eyes cleared enough that I realized I'd been sick all night long. Like you've never been sick. I hit the top of the tent, the side of the tent, the floor. I hadn't missed a square inch, and quite frankly, I didn't want to be in there either, so I got out. And that was my first drink of alcohol. And it was the most fabulous, incredible, magnificent, marvelous, wonderful spiritual experience I'd ever had. And it must have been because I put some amount of alcohol into my body from that day until the day I came to the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I didn't always drink the kinds of things that you would classify as a beverage. I drank a lot of vanilla extract. I used to buy it by the six-pack. I drank a lot of mouthwash. I drank a lot of perfume. Taboo became my after-dinner drink of choice. I love Taboo. If you're wearing it, I may follow you too closely and lap at your neck. And I don't know, this is unusual. We were talking about it earlier. We intuitively know to drink this stuff. My next door neighbor does not know that a bottle of alcoholwasm will get you there. But we intuitively know that. And I don't know how I know it. We weren't sitting around having conversation. I'm a bar drinker. I'm an alley drinker, a car drinker, a dumpster drinker, an office drinker, a grocery store drinker. I don't specialize, I just drink. But I love bars. I love sleazy, nasty, disgusting bars. And I know you got some here because I drank in them. I grew up in Pomona and I drank in San Bernardino, and I love some of the sleazy, disgusting, nasty bars here. I like the ones with sawdust on the floor. I like them when the mirrors are broken. You have to kind of dip around to see yourself in there. The upholstery around the bars are ripped, and people have tried to hold on as they're going off their bar stool. It's always a nice touch if there's a piece of broken furniture in the corner. I understand you can't smoke in a bar anymore, which makes no sense to me. I used to drink in places where guys would take a piss against the wall. They can still do that, but they can't smoke a cigarette. But they used to be full of smoke, and they had that wonderful used booze urine smell. I salivate still. I love that smell. But what fascinates me is the quality of people who drank in those places. I mean, there were CEOs of really big companies. There were bank presidents, admirals in the Air Force. I mean, that's what they said they were, and But we weren't sitting around having conversations like, well, what do you prefer, the red mouthwash or the green? What's your preference, Chantilly or Aquavelva? We weren't having those kinds of conversations. So it doesn't occur to me I'm living any different than anybody else. I think I drink because I want to drink. I don't know that I don't have a choice. I don't know that at 13 years old I put alcohol into an alcoholic body, and from that day on I had no choice. I think I drink because I want to drink. And I don't know that I'm living any differently than anybody else. I had an opportunity to go to college. I went to San Diego State. I graduated from there with a 3.8 grade point average. In retrospect, I'm a chronic, hopeless, helpless alcoholic. I'm drinking on a daily basis, and I'm a blackout drinker. I love blackouts. I love blackouts. I wish we could have blackouts sober. There was nothing more exciting to me than leaving work on September 12th, going back on September 18th, and discovering you'd been there the entire time. Makes the time between paychecks much shorter, too. And I'm a blackout drinker, but I graduated from college with a 3.8 grade point average. That almost killed me in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I got here, I told you it's too smart to be an alcoholic. Nobody with a 3.8 grade point average could possibly be an alcoholic. I stayed in San Diego and took classes for a master's degree. I'm one of those people, if I'm doing something well, I want to keep doing it. So I stayed and took classes for a master's degree. I left San Diego because I had taken all the classes San Diego State had to offer. Rationalization, justification, and denial. It's how my disease manifests itself. rationalization, justification, and denial. No matter what it is I do, I explain to you why I'm doing it. And as I'm saying it to you, I'm hearing it. And as I'm hearing it, I'm believing it. And I think I'm leaving because I've taken all the classes San Diego State has to offer. I don't think I'm leaving because I have a roommate who's a little annoyed with me. My roommate was really inconsistent. I'm a bar drinker, and even in the worst of my alcoholism, I had a tremendous amount of compassion. And I'd be sitting at a bar drinking, and the men who drank in the places I drank in had very little creativity. They had two basic lines: my wife doesn't understand, and I have no place to stay tonight. That was generally the end of their dialogue, and I have all of this compassion. And so some guy would come on to me with one of those lines, and I would say, listen, I'll take you home with me tonight, but I don't want to talk to you again until the bar closes. And so the bar would close. Being a lady of my word, I would take this guy home with me. We would get to my house. I would tell him to go ahead and go into the bedroom over here on the left, or I had to go to the restroom. So he would go into the bedroom on the left. I would go into my bedroom on the right. And I had just sent him in with my roommate. Now, a lot of times it would be okay with her. A lot of times she wouldn't mind at all. Other times it would upset her, and within a matter of minutes there'd be all this banging on my bedroom door, which I had, of course, locked my door because I had 7 o'clock classes and I had to get some sleep. If it would have always been okay with her or never been okay with her, I would have been all right. But she was so inconsistent. You'd have drank if you lived with her. She was so inconsistent. And I don't think I'm leaving because she's annoyed with me. I think I'm leaving because I've taken all the classes San Diego State has to offer. I don't think I'm leaving because I have another drunk driving assault charge pending. Another resentment I got in Alcoholics Anonymous. I found out here you can get arrested for a single charge of drunk driving. I never knew that. I always get arrested for drunk driving assault. And it had something to do with how I got out of the car. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. I'm driving down the street. The light comes on behind me. I pull over. The officer walks up. Well, the first thing I do is slam my car door open. Now, my intent is to knock him in the private parts. Men are a little fussy about their private parts, so as the door's flying open, he jumps back. And when he jumps back, it's really a good thing, because now he's far enough away I can get him in focus. And I think, one of him, one of me. One of him, one of me, I think I can take him. One of him, one of me, I think I'll try, and I would go out the car for him. And it'd be a really good fight. And I was a lot younger then, but it was a really good fight for a couple of minutes. But I wouldn't remember that back at the car he had a friend. And the friend had a radio. And the friend would call some more friends. And pretty soon be 3 or 4 of them. One to me, it's not fair anymore. I say, uncle, and they take me away. And the next time the light comes on behind me, I pull over. The officer walks up. I slam the car door open. He jumps back. He gets far enough away and get him in focus. And I think, one of him, one of me. One of him, one of me, I think I can take him. One of him, one of me, I think I'll try, and I'd go for him. It'd be a really good fight for a couple of minutes, but I wouldn't remember the friend, the radio, and the friend's friends. Pretty soon it'd be 5 or 6 of them. One of me, it's not fair anymore. I say, uncle, and they take me away. And I didn't do that once or twice. I did that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times. Never remembered the friend, the radio, and the friend's friends. And that's the insanity of mind disease. The insanity of mind disease is I do the same thing over and over, and I think the results are going to be different. This time it's a fair fight. This time I'm going to take him. And when you get out of the car like that, they attach an assault charge. They don't even care that they won the fight. Drunk driving assault. Drunk driving assault. And I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but I never really had any consequence. Well, they took my driver's license from me, but you don't really need that to drive a car. But beyond that, I never really had any consequences. I'd pay an attorney $1,000. He'd write a letter. He'd make a phone call, whatever he'd do, and that'd kind of be the end of it. I would never heard another thing. But one time I had 2 pending at the same time, and my attorney was nervous. And he let me know that he was nervous. And if your attorney's nervous, I think you ought to worry about it. So I'm sitting in a bar worrying about the fact that my attorney's nervous. And I struck up a conversation with this guy. And as luck would have it, he worked in a mortuary. And I came up with a plan. And I think alcoholics, we come up with really good plans really quickly. We went over the mortuary. We got a death certificate. We wrote my name on it. We filled out all the pertinent information. We forged a doctor's signature, and we sent it to the court. Because they can't expect a lot from you if you're dead. I called my attorney and I told him he didn't need to worry. He didn't worry, I didn't worry, nobody worried for, 30, 45 days. And then I got pulled over for drunk driving assault. And that time the judge wanted to see me. I couldn't figure out why he wanted to see me, but I went. And I'll never forget him looking at me. He said, "Miss Ochoa," he said, "tell me, how is it a dead person is standing in my court?" I shrugged my shoulders. I said, "I don't know, bad luck." And that's what I thought it was. It was bad luck. It was circumstances and conditions. It was the cops. It was you and they and them. It was a lot of things. Never occurred to me it had anything to do with alcohol. Never occurred to me it had anything to do with alcohol. I got offered a job in Chico, California, which is about as far north as you can get. I loaded everything I owned into my car. I took 2 cases of beer, 2 bottles of booze, and I headed north. I got to Santa Ana, which isn't the place you want to shoot for, but I was out of booze and I was thirsty. I pulled off the freeway. I have a sense I can find the sleaziest bar in town without even looking for it. I pulled into the into the parking lot of this place. I walked in the back door. It was full of smoke. It had that wonderful used booze, urine smell. Willie Nelson was singing on the jukebox, and I knew I was home. That's as far north as I ever got. 88 miles from where I started from. Alcohol had become my mother, my father, my God, my friend, my lover, my companion, my support. And at some point it had turned and began to strip me of self-esteem, self-worth, dignity, decency, honesty, pride. All the things we have going for us as human beings. And long before I got to you, it had taken it all. Alcohol controlled where I would live, where I would work, the people I would run with, and eventually the people I would run from. And I didn't have a clue. I thought I drank because I wanted to drink. I didn't know that I didn't have a choice. I thought I drank because I wanted to drink. I went into the profession of my choice. I rose very quickly to the top, and that too almost killed me in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because when I got here, I told you I was too successful to be an alcoholic. I told you about the trophies and the plaques. What I didn't tell you about, I was in the newspaper business, and we often gave awards, and I know tonight it was because God gave me a gift, but we often won awards. And what I didn't tell you about was the times that I would come out of a blackout, standing behind a podium much like this in a room full of people, holding an award, not knowing if I was giving it or receiving it. And so I would say thank you, and I would go sit down, and then somebody would elbow me and tell me I was presenting it to the junior farmers, and I'd have to get up and start over again. And I didn't tell you that. I just told you I was too successful to be an alcoholic. I arrived in Alcoholics Anonymous with what I pray God was my last drunk driving assault charge. The state of California was starting to get just a little annoyed at people barreling down the freeway at 80 miles an hour, blowing something in the breathalyzer above their grade point average. And I had been pulled over for what I hope was the last time. And I was taking the field sobriety test. By the end, I took field sobriety tests well. I know how to walk. It's heel to toe. I know how to touch your finger to your nose. It's this. It's not that. At the end of the test, the officer asked me to say the ABCs backwards. And the time before, I had responded with, "Well, I can't even do that sober." And so I had confessed, and they took me away. So this time when he asked me to say the ABCs backwards, I said, "Okay," and I turned around. See, you think it's funny. He wasn't even amused. He cuffed me and he took me to Orange County Jail and he put me in a cell with criminals. And I knew I didn't belong there. I mean, there were prostitutes, thieves. There were women who had been arrested for beating their husband, which I don't think should be a crime. But in California, they lock you up for it anyway. And I went to court on that charge. I was 26 years old. I was drunk in court that morning. It's the only way I went to court. It's the only way I went to the laundromat, to work, the grocery store. It's the only way I did anything. I stood there drunk that morning in court because of my past record and because the state of California was starting to give severe consequences for drunk driving. I was being sentenced to 10 years in prison. And in the middle of sentencing me, the expression on the judge's face changed. The tone of his voice got different. And I know he was as surprised at what he was saying as I was at what I was hearing. Because he looked at me and he said, "I know this won't work for you, but I'm going to offer you an alternative. And part of that alternative was meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wish I could tell you I took the alternative. I came here, looked at the 12 steps. I knew there were solutions to problems in my life. I worked them all in the first week and skyrocketed to recovery. And if Lynn Wilder wasn't here, I would tell you that story. But but that's not my story. I stood in the courtroom and thought about it. Jail, alternative. Jail, alternative. Been to jail. There's more alcohol and other drugs inside the institution than there are some days on the street. If you know what to do, who to do it to, and you're willing to go to any length, and I always was. Jail, alternative. Jail, alternative. The public defender's putting his elbow in my ribs the day the $1,000 attorney's gone. I got the public defender putting his elbow in my ribs trying to get me to make a decision, and I'm thinking about it. And while I was thinking about it, I had what I know tonight was a moment of clarity. Because as clear as I have ever known anything, I knew if I go to jail, I'll either die in the institution or I'll become institutionalized for life. And I didn't know why I knew it that morning, but I knew it. And I took the alternative. And I left the courtroom and I drank for 3 more months. In retrospect, I can tell you I didn't drink a greater quantity of alcohol. Physically, it had been impossible to drink a greater quantity of alcohol. But I drank with a sense of urgency and a desperation I had never known. And on October 4th, 1975, the day before I was to go back to court to tell the judge what it was I was doing with the alternative he gave me, on that day I came to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it was a Sunday night meeting in Laguna, Niguel, and Lynn Wilder was the first person I saw, and he was, I almost said fucking, he was... he was effing bigger than life. And he was louder than anything I'd ever heard in my whole life. And he had on every color in the rainbow in his clothing. And he was up in the front of that room running around like he was a chicken with his head cut off. And I thought, oh my God. Because you see, I had no idea what Alcoholics Anonymous was. As far as I heard, I knew I had never heard the words Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea what you people were going to do to me or for me. And that meeting is a speaker meeting. I can't tell you who talked that night. I wish I could. I can't tell you who talked that night. But I heard 2 things. I heard the answers are in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. So after the meeting, I stole the book. I mean, God knows I need to have the answers. I went home and read it. Not only could I not find the answers in that book, I couldn't even find the questions. I thought, oh, dear God, I've stolen the wrong book. I'm going to have to go back and get the right one. And I'm a thief. It's humiliating for a thief to have stolen the wrong book. Now, I don't know I'm a thief. I have to stay sober for a while, and my sponsor told me I was a thief. I still don't really think I was a thief. I mean, I'm in a bar drinking. The bar closes. I find some keys. I go find the car that they fit, and I'm driving myself home. My sponsor and the San Diego police think this is grand theft auto. I think it's alternative transportation. I just need to get home. Rationalization, justification, and denial, whatever I do, I explain to you why I'm doing it. As I'm telling you I'm hearing it, as I'm hearing it, I'm believing it. But and the other thing I heard in that meeting was that we don't drink between meetings. Well, I quickly looked around the meeting, and I didn't see any of you drinking in the meeting. And I thought, if you're not drinking in the meeting, and you don't drink between the meetings, when do you drink? This made me really nervous. I don't know how it impacts other newcomers, but it made me really nervous. And I left that night, and I went home and read that book, and I couldn't find the answers, and I was angry, and I was going to go back and tell the judge what a hideous mistake he had made. I mean, I'd have understood if he sent me to Sears School of Safe Driving. I didn't know why he sent me to a place where people didn't drink. But I figure I can't go back until I have the answers. I mean, what if he asked me a question? I need to have the answers. So Wednesday, with 4 days of sobriety, I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous to get the answer book. That's the only reason I came back. I don't think it matters why you come back. I think what's important is that you come back. I don't think it matters what your motives are, what your intentions are. I think what matters is what your actions are. Wednesday, with 4 days of sobriety, I went to my second meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in that meeting, I heard, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it. And I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I looked around the room, and I could not figure out what it was you had that was so hot that I should be willing to go to any length to get it. I mean, honestly, look at the person next to you. Unless you're sleeping with him, what is it? I mean, I could not figure it out, and then I saw him. And I truly believe there's a him for each of us. This guy was a skinny little fellow. He was bald-headed. He wore baggy pants. Not like the kids do today. I work with teenagers. I work with kids that wear pants that have absolutely no relationship to their body size. They wear pants that are so... They could put a homeless family in there with them. His weren't that big, but they were big. He had tennis shoes on with no shoelaces, but the holes were there where they should have been. And he nodded out during the meeting. And I quickly assessed the situation. I figured he's shooting heroin. Folks who shoot heroin nod out. And I can probably do this thing and not drink if I could shoot a little heroin. So I found out where he worked. I snuck down to his office the next day, and I said, Dick, I have to do this thing. To stay out of jail, I have to do this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't know how to do it. And he told me if I would go to meetings and read the book and talk to other alcoholics and not drink, so I guarantee you won't get drunk. If you don't get drunk, your life will get different. And I'm grateful he told it to me that way. He didn't tell me my life would get better. He didn't tell me my sex life would get better, my job life would get better, my finances would get better, my family life would get better, my relationships would get better, my sex life would get better. He didn't tell me any of it would get better. And I'm grateful because none of it has. I always like to offer a little hope to the newcomer. But it's all gotten different. And as I stand here tonight, I can tell you from the top of my head to the tip of my toes, I have never had it so good. See, I don't know good from bad for me. I'm going through something I think is good for me, and it generally turns out to be bad for me. And I'm going through something I think is bad for me, and it generally turns out to be good for me. And I don't know good from bad for me, but I know different. I've gone through times in my sobriety where my entire life has fallen apart. I've gone through times that have been incredibly painful, and I'm very dramatic, so I always refer to it as the dark night of the soul. Unless, of course, you're going through it, then I just tell you to get over yourself. But in those times, if I don't drink and don't die, and don't drink and don't die, and don't drink and don't die, I've gotten far enough beyond it to, in retrospect, be able to look back and see that it had to be exactly that way for God to move me to where He'd have me be. See, I'm the kind of person, I dig a rut, I get comfortable, I decorate. I'm really content with how life is right here, right now. Left to my own devices, I'll shortchange myself, because I get comfortable. And God has a plan for me bigger than my wildest imagination. And sometimes to get me out of that rut, it takes a little kick in the butt to get me out of that rut. And that kick in the butt can be painful sometimes. And in that pain, I don't drink and I don't die, and I move beyond it to, in retrospect, see that it had to be exactly that way for God to move me to where He'd have me be. It seems to me, and this is just my perspective, and it may not even be true, but it seems to me that people disappointed me all my life. People hurt me and they let me down. My parents told me they loved me anymore. Their love and I'd have died. Their love was physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive. I remember as a small child making a conscious decision, I don't want to be hurt anymore. And as a small child, I began to build a wall between me and you. And I just didn't want to be hurt anymore. And that brick wall, it kept you out. What I never knew about that brick wall is it made me a prisoner inside. I lived behind that wall in isolation and loneliness. And alcohol didn't allow me to come out and play. Alcohol just made it okay for me to be back there. When you live behind a wall like that, you don't believe and you don't trust. And I hadn't believed a human being in a very long time. But for some reason, I believed that old man that morning. And I didn't know why then, but I know why tonight. I believed that old man because of the music of Alcoholics Anonymous. One alcoholic talking to another. One alcoholic talking to another goes through that brick wall. And I believed him. I went home, I already had the book, so I'd open it to chapter 3 and I'd read the line, most of us aren't willing to admit we were real alcoholics. I'd say amen and close the book, and that was reading the book. I'd go down to the Canyon Club in Laguna Beach where they have AA meetings. I'd have a cup of coffee on the way out. I'd say hi, Jim, to the manager. He'd say hi, Patti. That was talking to another alcoholic. My court program said I had to go to 2 meetings a week. I thought that was really obsessive, but I was willing to go to any lengths to stay out of jail. So I went to the 2 meetings a week that my court program said I had to go to. And the only thing I did right is I didn't drink. I didn't drink, and I didn't drink, and I didn't drink. And I wasn't the kind of newcomer that was kind and loving and pleasant. I was not the kind of newcomer that you were rushing up to and embracing. Sure, people came up to me and tried to give me their phone numbers, but if you'd walk up to me, I'd spit at you, kick at you, throw a cup of coffee at you. This isn't the bedrock of mental health, but eventually people weren't coming up to me anymore. In fact, the only people that would approach me would be if your sponsor was annoyed with you. He or she would point to me and say, "See that woman over there? Go give her your phone number." And you would try, and I would go off. I threw a chair at a guy one night because he irritated me. Lynn Wilder thinks it's him. He did irritate me, but I don't think I threw a chair at him. But in case I did, my darling, I will make amends at public level for having thrown a chair at you. Whoever I threw it at, I missed, and it went through a plate glass window. Guy was sharing one night at a meeting. He wasn't saying anything to me. I just took it personally. I jumped him after the meeting. I was beating his head into the concrete floor. I'm trying to get kicked out of AA here. It doesn't occur to me, just don't come back. I think you have to get thrown out. And took 6 guys to get me off of him, and when they did, I knew they were going to tell me I couldn't come back. And Alex looked at me and he said, "Patty," he said, "next time that volcano goes off," he said, "just put your hands in your pockets and don't touch another human being." And I wondered how he knew about the volcano, because that's what I had inside of me. I had a volcano inside of me. And that volcano would erupt. And when it erupted, I had to do something. When it erupted, I wanted to see blood, preferably yours. And Alex told me to put my hands in my pockets and not touch another human being. And I walked around that way for a long time before I discovered that anger was a cover for a tremendous amount of fear. I was absolutely scared to death. I was afraid of life. I was afraid of you. I was afraid of me. I'd survived in places where you can't survive if you're afraid. And so I began to cover that fear a long time ago with anger. And I began to act it out in violence. I would sit in the meeting back of a speaker meeting. The speaker would irritate me. I'd jump up and I'd start spewing out. It was all profanities, but I'd hook them together. It sounded like a sentence. I'd spew it out from the back of the room. And some little blue-haired lady would turn around and smile and say, "Keep coming back." And I'd wave my court card in her face and tell her I didn't have a choice. And I'd sit back down until I went off again. And thank God the people in Alcoholics Anonymous understood their traditions, because you never threw me away. All you ever said to me was, "Keep coming back." You said it from a distance, but you said, "Keep coming back." And I kept coming back. I think you wanted me to come back to another meeting, but I kept coming back. And I kept coming back, and I kept coming back. And I've been in a lot of pain in the last 30 years. Sometimes life is painful. But I have never been in the kind of pain that I was in 8.5 months away from my last drink. The pain of not drinking and not recovering. The pain of not drinking and not recovering is the greatest pain I've ever been in. And 8.5 months away from my last drink, that pain drove me to my knees. And on my knees, I took the first step of recovery in Alcoholics Anonymous. I admitted I was powerless over alcohol. That whenever I ingest alcohol, I have no choices. When I drink alcohol, I'm damned to live the way alcohol says I'll live. If I don't like the way I live today, if I don't drink alcohol, I can choose to live differently tomorrow. But if I drink alcohol, I have no choices. If I drink alcohol, I'm damned to live the same way day after day after day after day. And I was powerless. Whenever I get into the ring with alcohol, I lose. Whether I'm fighting it because I'm drinking it or I'm fighting it because you're drinking it. Whenever I get into the ring with alcohol, I lose. And my life had become unmanageable. Alcohol controlled every area of my life. Where I would live, where I would work, every area of my life was controlled by alcohol. I had no choices. In 8.5 months away from my last drink, I chose to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. My sobriety was a gift from a very gentle and a very loving God. I was given the gift of sobriety on October 4th, 1975. I was given a gift I wasn't looking for. I was given a gift I didn't want. I was given a gift I didn't know what to do with. But I was given a gift from a very gentle and a very loving God. And 8.5 months later, I chose to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it says in the book, these are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. My experience is that once I chose to recover, I am required to work the steps exactly the way they're written in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Once I made a choice to recover in Alcoholics Anonymous, I am required to work the steps exactly the way they're written in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have done that. I came to believe that a power greater than myself would restore me to sanity, and I'm not going to go all through all the steps, so those of you who are dancers, please don't worry. The light ball's getting to me, too. It's I'm about to start tapping the toe back here myself. But I'm a loner by nature. Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't change my nature. What Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me is it's giving me the courage and strength to do the things I need to do in spite of my nature. But I'm a loner. I love to be by myself. I entertain myself really well, all alone. Probably better than I should. I like to fish. I like to read. I like to do things by myself. You know you're a loner if you don't like AA potlucks. That's generally an indicator. The book says we become disgustingly and dangerously antisocial. I didn't become that way. It started out that way. I have developed one social skill over the last 30 years. Unfortunately, I've used it. I'm all out for the rest of the day. And I don't have, but it takes a lot of courage and strength to come here. This is the hardest thing for me to do, is to be with you. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength, and I don't have it, but we do. I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and you give me the courage and strength to do the things I need to do in spite of my nature. But I'm a loner by nature. I used to say I don't have any trouble with God, but I do have one problem with God. I believe we are all God's children, and I have always wanted to be an only child. That's the only problem I have with God. For me, being a loner, if I had come to believe that God was going to restore me to sanity, I would have sat on my couch. God would have flown by, sprinkled me with sanity, taken off to wherever it is God hangs out, and that would have been the end of it. I would have never had to do another thing. I would be on my couch right now watching reruns of Special Victims Unit. And I like watching the reruns because about halfway through you can figure out how it ends. And somebody else would be here sharing with you. So for me, the power greater than myself, for me, was the action, the steps 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You see, I have spent my whole life trying to think my way into right living. That has never worked for me. Through taking the action, the steps, I have been able to act my way into right thinking. And in the book it says that, in the discussion of step 10, it says, for by this time sanity will have been restored. Through taking the actions of the steps, I have been restored to sanity. I have alcoholism. My thinking is still a little skewed from the rest of the world, but I have you. When I come up with a good idea today, I run it by you. And I still come up with really good ones. But I run it by you. I don't have to take an action on every thought that I have. I used to have a thought and take an action. Today I can have a thought and I don't have to take an action on it. I've had 2 lust attacks while I've been standing up here tonight. So far I haven't taken an action on either one of them. But there's hope. So I work the steps exactly the way they're written in the book. And through that process, that wall that I have built between me and you, one brick at a time, that wall came down. One brick at a time, that wall came down. And when I did step 7, for me, it's the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous. It may not be the miracle for you, but it's the miracle for me. It's step 7. I did my 5th step. I did what the book says. I thought about it. I got lulled into reading the book. I was in the middle of the 7-step prayer when I became aware of what I was reading. That prayer took the longest journey anything's ever taken for me, the journey from my head to my heart. And I knew that I believed it. And I finished that 7-step prayer, and exactly what it says in the book happened to me. I walked through the archway to freedom. I walked away from the person I have been all of my life to start to become the person God intended for me to be. The best I've ever described myself when I came here as an animal with latent human tendencies. That's what walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because the steps work. Because you've been willing to share with me. You share your experience with me, and you allow me to take your experience out in the world and live it. And it becomes my experience. And because you've been willing to do that, I become very kind, very loving, very gentle, very caring, very nurturing. Of course, now they're telling me it's codependency and I have to recover from it, but I love the person who I am. I'm tempted to write a book, Women Who Love Themselves Too Much. And steps 8 and 9 were conventional ways of getting rid of conventional guilt. It wasn't about sorry. It was about living my life differently. You taught me how to be a daughter. You taught me how to be a mother. You taught me how to be a sister. You taught me how to be an employee. You didn't tell me how to do it. You showed me how you did it. And you allowed me to watch how you did it. And you allowed me to take your experiences into my world and live them, and they became my experiences. And through you, I became a very loving daughter, a very good sister, a very kind mother, and in the process of making those amends, in the process of living my life differently, I started to notice that people in Alcoholics Anonymous had friends, and I don't have any. I have no friends. I didn't think I wanted friends. Friends are kind of a nuisance. They're the people that go to you, hey, I called you up last night, where were you? Well, if I wanted you to know where I was last night, I'd have told you before I went. You know, leave me alone. But I started making, I won't tell you the whole story, but I started making friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have some very, very dear friends in Alcoholics Anonymous. But my dearest friend of all times, it talks in the book about we are people who normally would not mix. And my dearest friend is somebody who she and I normally would not mix. I call her the princess. She calls me the medicine woman. That'll, get you started. I think self-supporting through your own contributions is work. She thinks it's alimony. We go away together. I've got a backpack slung over my shoulder. She's got 14 foot lockers because she has to have costume changes. We are people who normally would not mix. But what we have in common is a tremendous passion for Alcoholics Anonymous. We both live in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. We have a huge passion for Alcoholics Anonymous. And my friend the princess was diagnosed a little over 4 years ago with breast cancer metastasized in the liver. And the end of October, 4 years ago, she died. And for 18 years, we walked this journey together. And I had the privilege of being with her when she took her last breath. I spent her last 20 minutes of her life talking to her. And I kept telling her she needed to let go. She was going to be okay. And I kept telling her she needed to let go because we were going to be okay. And when she took her last breath, her mother was with her. Her sponsor was with her. Another friend was with her, and I was with her. And she took a breath and she left. And I didn't think I was going to be okay. See, I just don't want to be hurt anymore. And I had to build that wall to keep you out so that you couldn't hurt me. When Cindy Martindale died, I didn't think I was going to be okay. And I so badly wanted to build that brick wall back up because I just hurt so bad. And I just wanted to build that wall back up between you and I. And the people in Alcoholics Anonymous wouldn't let me do it. Every time I built a brick, somebody would come and kick it away. And you took my hand and you loved me. And you gave me the courage and strength that I needed, 1 minute at a time, to keep moving forward. And 20 minutes after Cindy was dead, I was in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I was in the middle of you because my feet know where to bring me. And every time I didn't think I could go on another minute, my feet brought me to you. And I stayed in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous, and it is still very difficult for me. I still miss her every day. Every day I want to call up and tell her something. I want to call up and tell her Lynn Wilder and I are in San Bernardino together. Every day I want to call her. And it's still very hard. And the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous continue to give me the courage and strength to show up without that brick wall between me and you. And that was October 27th. And then following October 23rd, I got a call from my son. My son grew up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I brought him here with me. He's 11 months old when I got sober. And I brought him with me because I didn't know what to do with him. And I bring him with me, and you'd hold him during the meeting, and you'd love him. And at the end of the meeting, he came back to me. And I bring him to another meeting, and another meeting, another meeting. Everything my son knows, he learned from the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous. He grew up with you. He learned how to be kind and loving and gentle. He also taught him how to con and manipulate, and I've never been thrilled with that, but I guess you take the good with the bad. You've taken him with your families camping. Lynn was his basketball coach. Everything. My son grew up here, and if just being in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous were enough, my son would have never had a problem. My son can recite the literature. He used to answer the phone and tell the women I sponsor what to do if I wasn't there. If just being in a meeting were enough, he would have never had a problem. But just sitting in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous is not enough. And my son had a journey that he needed to take. And he started that journey, and that journey took him to places that alcoholism takes us. It took him on places that men and women shouldn't have to go. And the biggest lie we tell as alcoholics is I'm only hurting myself. The biggest lie we tell, I'm only hurting myself. I can tell you, if you have a mother there is somebody else that you're hurting when you put alcohol into your body. And I was in the ring with his disease, and I was getting the poop kicked out of me. And I did everything wrong. I wired him money because he said he had accidents and needed stitches in his head. He taught me how to do MoneyGrams. He was in San Francisco, so I couldn't look at him. And I just was never willing to get the call, and so I sent him the money. And the thing that I did right is I came and told you. I came and told you the truth. I came and told you that one more time I sent him money. I came and told you what I was doing. And I didn't look good. I absolutely did not look good. And I'll tell you what, if you can't look bad in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I would rather look bad here than be drunk. I can't have any secrets from you. No matter how unhealthy the choices I'm making are, I need to come here and tell you the truth. And I told you what I was doing. And I just did it, and I was in the ring, and I was getting beat up really bad. And Cindy Martindale died October 27th. And the following October 23rd, I got a phone call from my son. And he was back in Orange County. He said, Mom, I need help. And God will do for me what I can't do for myself. God won't do for me what I can do for myself. I can go to work, so he won't send me money in the mail. But he will do for me what I can't do for myself, because this is my only son, and I love him more than life. And out of my mouth came these words that I would have never spoken to him. I said, Patrick, I can't help you. If I continue to help you, I'm going to kill you. You just stay right where you are. And I called a high-profile member of Alcoholics Anonymous who happens to be in this room. He will remain nameless. And I got his voicemail. Because if anybody's going to 12-step my son, it's going to be a high-profile member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got his voicemail. And so my fingers dialed the biggest goof in Alcoholics Anonymous. I would not have called this man, left to my own devices. I would not have called this man, but my fingers dialed his number, and he answered the phone. And thank God he understood the traditions. So I told him my son needed help. And he didn't say, have the boy call me. Whenever the hand reaches out, it doesn't say whose arm it's attached to. He didn't say, have the boy call me. He said, where is he? And I gave him the address. And he went and picked up a newcomer. And those two guys got my son out of a motel room. And they brought him to the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. They brought him to the middle of you. And tomorrow my son celebrates 3 years of sobriety. And he celebrates 3 years of sobriety because the men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous have surrounded him and kept him in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's very involved in Orange County young people. They had a dance last night. They had over 400 young people at a dance in Laguna Beach. This is the future of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they were out having a grand time last night. And my son's in the middle of you, and you are teaching my son the same things that you taught me. By example, you're showing him how to be a man, how to be a friend, how to be a son. He is absolutely the very best son I know. When I was trying to get him to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I would tell him, Patrick, you need to go to a meeting. Patrick, you need... He said, I will not be Patty O's son. I'm very active, and he'd say, I will not be Patty O's son. Rationalization, justification, denial, whatever he needed to say to keep from coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. And after he was sober, about 6 or 7 months, I guess, I was at a meeting, and a young man came up to me, and he said, are you Pat O's mother? I went and found my son. I said, I will not be Pat O's mother. I'm going to end right now, mostly because I might have to go to the bathroom, which is probably more information about me than you need to have. But I'm going to end with the story that puts it all together for me. It's the story of the man that goes to see St. Peter. And he asks St. Peter to show him heaven and hell. And St. Peter takes him to a room, and it says hell on the door, but when they open the door, it's a banquet. Tables and tables and tables of food, as much food as he could ever imagine, any kind of food as he'd ever want. But the people in that room, amongst all that food, are starving, they're hungry, and they're dying. And the reason that they're hungry is they have long wooden spoons tied to their hands, and the spoons are just a little bit too long, and they can't quite get the food to their mouth. And so they're sitting amongst plenty, and they're dying. And that's how I was before I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I was out there amongst plenty, and I was dying. And they took me to a room marked heaven, and inside that room was the same thing. It was a banquet. tables and tables and tables of food, as much food as you could ever imagine, any kind of food you'd ever want. And the people in that room had those spoons tied to their hands too, and the spoons were just a little bit too long. And they couldn't quite get the food to their mouth. But the people in that room were full, and they were happy, and they were content. And the difference was that one man was taking a spoonful of food, and he was feeding the man across the table. And he was taking a spoonful of food and feeding the person next to him, and she was feeding somebody else. And that's how Alcoholics Anonymous works for me. I don't have my own answers. I have to come here, and I have to let you feed me. And if I'm lucky, every once in a while I get to give a spoonful of this thing to another alcoholic. And you don't have to have 30 years, 20 years, 10 years. If you've got one day, you have something to feed to the man or woman coming through the door. When we prayed at the end of this meeting, it's your courage and your strength that I'm going to need in order to continue to choose to recover. If you've got one day, you have courage to give to the person on your right, and you have strength to give to the person on your left. We can do what I can. Left to my own devices, I'm amongst plenty and I'm dying. And I come here and you introduce me to a God that has a plan for me beyond my wildest imagination. Left to my own devices, I shortchange myself. I sit in the middle of you and I have the biggest life in the entire world. When I was 4 days sober, an old man told me if I didn't drink, I wouldn't get drunk. And if I didn't get drunk, my life would get different. And I end with this because it's been my experience, and I pray, God, it's your experience. It's a line in chapter 5 that says, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Thank you.